Today, we're going to go through a number of sections to learn about AZ104. But why we learning it? Because that's going to give you a kind of a role or status of cloud administrator. Cloud administrator manages within that organizations all the cloud infrastructure. That includes storage, networking, computes, other capabilities, and full IT lifecycle. They take end user request and make recommendation on the services for the optimal performance, scaling, capacity, monitoring, and so on. How do they do these jobs? So you being a cloud administrator, you will require a number of tools, and Azure provides a number of tools like Azure Portal, which is a web-based portal. And also you can utilize PowerShell scripting or PowerShell console, CLI, command line interface. And that's how you can actually do the management. There's a mobile app as well. So you're on the go. You can actually send some commands if your organization or your customer would allow you to do that. As a successful cloud administrator, you require to have certain type of knowledge along with that, which is operating system level knowledge, virtualization, cloud infrastructure, storage, and networking. To gain this certification, it is highly recommended that you should also gain the certification of AZ900. That's pretty much fundamental. I'm sure most of you already have it. If not, it's a good start to have 900. And then this next step is AZ104, because that actually takes you to the associate level that goes one step even deeper. And if you are interested in gaining the further certification, then you can go for AZ305, which is architect level certification. And that's something we can recommend as well. So in AZ104, you will be covering or you will be learning manage Azure identity and governance. So these are the like study areas. Implement and manage storage. You got deploy and manage Azure compute resources. Configure and manage virtual networking. Monitor and backup the resources. If you are planning to go for the certification, then this weightage is just a more like an indicative weightage. So you can expect 20 to 25% of the questions from manage Azure identity and governance and so on. As a part of this course, what we will be doing. So day one, we will be learning about identity, which is today. We will be learning about governance and compliance and Azure administration. In day two, we will move forward towards virtual networking, inter-site connectivity, network traffic management. Then day three, we'll be learning more about storage, virtual machines, VMs, app services like functions and other stuff as well, which is serverless architecture. In day four, we'll be learning containers, ACA, data protection, monitoring, and so on. We will try and cover some of the granular topics in between as well. And I will try and give you some tips on where else you can learn even more detailed knowledge about it. So some of the additional resources to keep in mind. So Azure Documentation and Microsoft Learn is pretty much now same platform where you have like online free training courses, self-learning courses, but also you have in-depth documentation where every type of Azure services, you can go and read about it. What is this service about? What it provides, how it works, how do you configure that, and what are the like limitations, do's and don'ts. So those are the stuff you can actually learn more in detail from the documentation. You also have Azure Fridays Learn Live, which is channel 9, where you can see more and more videos with the demonstrations there. I also recommend if you are going for certification, then make sure you visit exam readiness section, where you have Learn's sandbox environment, where you can actually simulate how your exam is going to look like, how they ask you a question, what are the tools look like, how you can mark or unmark the question for the later review, and so on. So let's jump into the administer identity section. What is it? What that covers is how we're going to configure Azure Active Directory. Now, when it comes to the identity, the first thing comes in our mind is how we're going to authenticate, how we're going to prove that you present a right identity. And for that, the tool is Azure Active Directory. In the previous days, if you used to operate, they always used to call Active Directory, but now it's in Azure and it provides even a lot more resources, a lot more features, and even advanced level protection. And that covers under Azure Active Directory. When it comes to Azure Active Directory, you probably would like to learn about how we can configure users, how we configure group accounts, so group them together. And in these sections, we will try and cover one lab, which is about managing Azure Active Directory identity. So let's get started. So to configure Azure Active Directory, you probably have there are different topics you would like to cover and learn. And what are these? So in this one is pretty much you need to understand the benefits and the feature of the Azure Active Directory. You also need to compare how the ADDS Azure Directory domain services compares with Active Directory, Azure Active Directory, and also understand about the AD concepts. What are the different type of additions are available? Because you must understand the limitations and those additions available, which is the best for your use, which is the best for your customers as well. And also you need to learn more about in depth in terms of how you can actually provide some of the self-service areas or configuration, including self-service password reset. Because if you're operating an organization where you have thousands and thousands of users, and people do tend to forget their passwords or they lock out themselves, you need to provide some sorts of self-service services, else you will go crazy managing so many requests in a day-to-day activities. Okay, so let's go to next page. So here it describes about what are the Active Directory benefits and the features. And if you want to learn more about it, if you search in search engine about the Active Directory, what is, you should be able to find it. So this is more like architecture, how that works. So you probably have in this on-premise apps where all your legacy applications are sitting there. Then you require some sort of authentication, which is probably you operating in Active Directory, which is hosted in-house or even in your private cloud. And then here you got the Azure Active Directory. This architecture actually shows how best you can actually combine both as well, but overall how the services are interrelated. So on your local on-prem, you got the auth services, which is Kerberos and TLM, and pretty much you are aware of it, what that look. So what are these services? But when you go in Azure Active Directory, you have authentication, different protocols and methods is a SAML, OAuth, OpenID, WS Federation, and that actually authenticates all your cloud services. But if you want to have access to your on-prem services or on-prem requires cloud services using a different ADs, this is how you can synchronize in between users and groups and their authentication and authorization area. So this is a very much high level Active Directory architecture and the benefits and features. So what is Azure AD in terms of the concept? So there are different concepts like identity, accounts, and what is it? So identity is nothing but just an object that used for your authentication. So it's more like an authenticated process that object will be used. Account is where you got username and password, and that associated with with identity. That's how it's getting utilized. Azure AD account, that's which is you're pretty much aware of your different type of authentication accounts you can use. You got Azure AD tenant and directory. In cloud infrastructure, we call that Azure AD is a tenant where you can define multiple tenants. Example, you have one organization, single organization, you probably might be operating in one single tenant. But if you have head office is sitting in one region, you have multiple different offices in a different region or similar region, you could be operating in a multiple tenancy environment or multiple directory. Azure subscription, which is when you're actually talking about cloud services, and you probably have learned in your fundamental training. So subscription is nothing but is like a group of services where you actually put it down and controlled in a logical area where you can finance all the accounting or probably payments or services. And within this subscription, you have lots of other resources, resource groups, and so on. And for the administrative purposes, you'd like to have those multiple subscription based on the different purposes. So let's compare with ADDS to Azure Active Directory. So Azure AD is more like a managed service, and you only manage the users, groups, policy. Deploying ADDS with the virtual machine using Azure, that means that you can manage the deployment, the configuration, and so on. So this is a kind of like in a high level comparisons here. So Azure AD is more like a primary identity solution, and it's pretty much designed on HTTP or HTTPS communication. Pretty much it's recommended to use HTTPS. You can query using REST API over HTTP and HTTPS instead of LDAP. So that's a difference where the Azure Active Directory operates on REST API. It uses the similar HTTP, HTTPS protocols, but such as SAML, WS Federation, OpenID Connect for authentication, which we also call OAuth authorization instead of Kerberos. So that's how it differentiates compared to ADDS. Includes federation services and many third-party services like Facebook. So when you need to federate services, so your user would like to use external authentication services, it can be configured as well. And Azure AD user groups are created in a flat structure. So there are no organizational OUs or GPOs. So that's how this compares to ADDS. Now let's look into the different editions available for Azure Active Directory or AAD or Azure AD. So we have three, typically four actually, to be honest, but there are three in terms of the comparison. One is it automatically comes with the Microsoft 365 apps. There are no object limits, but if you're using a free service, then you got 500,000 objects you can create. Single sign-on is throughout all those type of editions. You get that. You also get core identity and access, which is like authentication services, B2B collaboration. What is B2B collaboration? So it's a business-to-business authentication collaboration. So there are two terms you will be always looking into: B2B and B2C authentication. So just for your knowledge on that one. Where the Microsoft 365 app also comes with identity and access for Office 365, which is now we call M365, Microsoft 365. And all the other premium features, you probably would like to consider P1 and P2 editions, where the P2 is the topmost edition. Implementing self-service password reset. What you probably needs to do is there are different type of steps you need to perform. But to do that, first of all, it is recommended that you look at what is your requirement. what's your organization or customer's requirement, whether they want to implement. And if they would like to implement, there are some sorts of multi or the two-factor authentication needs to be put in place while they're doing the password reset, because you still want to provide the self-service password reset kind of services, more interactive services to make it easy for your end user, but also wants to protect that service. And to do so, you probably would like to available make different methods available to your end user. So on this screenshot, you can easily identify that which authentication method you can configure, whether it's email, mobile phone, security questions. And you can also consider how many number of questions you would like to ask and how many questions your end user should be answering as a minimum to reset. So in this screenshot, you can see there are 5 questions. Number of questions are required to register. So at the time of registration, your user will be selecting 5 questions and providing the answers. But when you need to do the password resets, how many questions you like to ask? So probably it makes sense to have 5 questions at the time of registration, but then asking 2 or 3 questions. In the setting, you got 3, 4, or 5 options. So probably you want to give it 3, so you can randomize those questions. Okay, you can also ask your user to register for MFA or 2FA. So that is it's very important that you take them through some sorts of multi-factor authentication, and that way you can be assured that it's not getting into the wrong hands. So let's check a little bit of knowledge check on this one. So there are Microsoft Learn modules, which I would recommend you to just go and learn yourself and in your free time. So when you looking allow users to reset their password with self-service element, so there is a in-depth learning which you can actually go and visit. So if I just click one of them and try and bring that on your screen, so probably you can see this how that look like. So when you go in this kind of courses, these are the self-learning, where you would be taken to different topics, and wherever you see the exercise, that's where you will be given the steps. In the steps, you need to then perform those steps and acquire the right result. So while doing this, so probably I'll take you through one example so you can actually go through other topics at your convenience. And so when you go into the next step, you will be given all the details, which some of the details I've already presented on the slides so that you can see it. So I'm just going to quickly scroll through. Here you can check all your knowledge check here. So questions and answer, which is probably a good way to move forward as well. So let's do this here quickly. So when is a user considered registered for SSPR? So here you have 3 options. When they have registered at least one of the permittable authentication method, when they have registered at least the number of methods that you have required to reset a password, when they have set up the minimum number of security questions. So whenever you go through this, you select your right answer, whatever it is. I'm not actually quickly just to taking it through, just to give you the experience how that's going to look like. So you can then select, and your correct answer will be marked as correct, but incorrect will have an explanation. So this is what I would like to show you here by giving incorrect answer. So if I selected admin can reset their password by using authentication method, that's not the right answer. So it gives at least 2 methods are required to authenticate a password reset for an admin account, where the correct answer is here. User can reset their password when they can't sign in. If the user passes the authentication test, then they can reset their password. So this is how you can actually check your knowledge. Even if you got it wrong, you got the explanation, and that really helps you moving forward. When you go to the steps where the exercise is needed, That's where it will ask you to go through your portal and then go through the different type of settings and permutations here. While doing this, you probably, if you have your own tenant or a portal subscription, you can definitely use it. Be mindful of how the costing works. So if some of the services are not permittable there, and if you are trying it out, make sure you decommission within the time limit before it gets charged. Other way you can operate this, if you haven't got any subscription or tenant, you can always register for free services, which gives you $200 free, and you can complete those registration steps. And there are always free services are always available to you throughout the life of that until the new decision getting made by Microsoft. But apart from that, there are a number of areas which you can practice easily. So this is what I just wanted to quickly demonstrate to you. So there is the other one. If you would like to make a note of a manage device identity with Azure AD join and enterprise state roaming and implement manage hybrid identity. So these are the modules